IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning into In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
When I need to talk, I'll come over there.
Yeah, I was just trying to get enough space for she can be here and you can be there.
Okay. Nah, she'll be fine. I'm gonna wait my turn. Hey,
Man, what are you doing? What? You encouraging him? Dude, I ain't saying that. See, it's all fun and games now until we can't get no guests. Because everyone want to talk to you.
We didn't have that though. Miss what's the face over Albemarle? What was her name? The oldest black lady, Charles, that wouldn't come in.
What happened? Because
we was on the other side. This was back when I was really asking questions.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I try to be more polished now.
He's equivalent to Charlamagne the God.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show.
Yep.
Sir Charles.
Miss Max.
Razor. Can't wait for this show.
In the booth in the building one more again.
That's halfway scary, Charles. Right up front like that.
Look, I stay scared. like being scared in this booth with Razor is just a normal feeling. Like you know how you get I'm like a little vertigo sometimes or like stuff like that, and your body adjusts to it.
Right.
So after 8 years on air with Razor, my norm is nervousness.
You're right.
You know.
True
I'm
that.
just used to it.
True that.
But good family, you can be anywhere in the world, but you are here with us, and we certainly appreciate it. IMHO Talk Show, and per usual, we are brought to you in part by none other than the good folks over at the Jefferson School Foundation.
That's right.
City Center. And we got El Capo, we got the Queen Bee of Jeff School with us. I'm gonna get a hike. We got no other than Kimberly Sheffield. And if that ain't enough, we got somebody who literally runs the city. He runs the city figuratively and literally.
Okay.
Talking about none other than my man, Mr. Dow, aka Little. Yo. But, yeah,
Well,
good to see y'all. Good to see y'all as always.
Kim, have you ever received a reception like that, like introduction?
Every
like
time I'm going.
Charles has a tendency to gas me. Whenever I want gas, I call Charles, but humbly. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what friends are for. But in all seriousness, I want to thank y'all for y'all continued support, whether that's prolific or it's the good folks over at Jefferson Schools. You both are cornerstones that mean so much to the city. And so it's just a pleasure every time we have y'all on.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who still may not know, Kim,
Mm-hmm.
what is the Jefferson School Foundation?
The Jefferson School Foundation proudly owns and manages the Jefferson School City Center.
Okay.
The Jefferson School City Center is the historic Jefferson School. Inside of the Jefferson School City Center, you will find a host of nonprofit organizations that lease space from the Jefferson School Foundation.
To name a few.
Oh, well, 2 anchoring tenants, Carver Recreation Center, the good folks at Jefferson School African American Heritage Center. Shout out to Dr. Douglas and their brilliant staff, PVCC, Piedmont Y, the Yoo-Hoo Roof Foundation, Virginia the Book, Fountain Fund, Literacy Volunteers, Women's Initiative, and Centera Star Hill.
All right. I think it's pretty evident that the foundation is going on a huge campaign to kind of reimagine, redefine, refuel, if you will, the Jefferson School and the future of it. Can you elaborate on that? Tell us what that's all about.
So reimagined, redefined, and refueled for the future is our theme to the rebranding.
Okay.
However, in my humble opinion, the Jefferson School Foundation historically is behind the scenes.
Okay.
Right? Just because we're behind the scenes, we have to remember that there is impactful, important work that happens with the Jefferson School Foundation.
That's right.
Sustaining and preserving the Jefferson School City Center. So this is our bold transformation. New logo, new mission, new values, new website. So we're going to unveil everything October 5th.
Okay. Can we jump into that? October 5th.
Yeah.
Can we jump to, am I jumping ahead, Charles?
Hey, this your show.
Look, what's happening October 5th? What's
October 5th, we are calling this a little bit of a soft opening. We're reintroducing ourselves to the community.
Okay.
We're going to unveil our new logos, our new short film, our new mission, vision. We've got some blasts from the past that'll be there. You guys will be there supporting us. I'm excited.
You're working.
Long time coming.
Yeah.
So this is going to be super dope.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me interject there though, because with the long history of the Jefferson School, being there and to be able to have new blood, fresh ideas and things like that. Like, can you just elaborate on that part, just personally, real quick, on what that means to you? You know what I mean? Because you are responsible for, arguably, I'm not sure all the statistics, and maybe my girl Tanisha got to call up here and tell me the statistics. But like that may be like the longest standing, like Black place that we have in Charlottesville. You know what I mean? Like so that means a lot. So I just wanted to kind of interject there to get what that means to you personally, to be leading such major work for the community.
So I have spent the majority of my career in corporate America and in sales, but with a heart to serve.
Okay.
So when you enter into the Jefferson School City Center every day and you suit up, and you're suiting up with people that are serving the community. Let's be clear. We're all serving something or someone. There is nothing more powerful than to serve the community.
Right.
So I am super fueled by that. That gives me motivation every morning to get up and suit up a little harder. So I just think the impactful work that's being done at the city center is enough to make everybody want to refuel.
Well said. Well said.
If I may, Charles, so speaking of the community, how is the foundation itself incorporating them or engaging with them through this redefining process?
So again, historically, we've kind of always been behind the scenes. So with me on board now, we're having more holistic conversations with the community.
Okay.
So we partnered with the American Red Cross this year. We did our first blood drive. If you have not sit down and talked to Mary Coleman, please do.
Yeah.
Her presentation is so powerful, and it is a true call to action for Black and Brown people to get involved with donating blood. We've opened our doors to the community conference room. So now there's a free space at the Jefferson School City Center for your nonprofit or established organization to come meet.
Yeah.
Jay Johnson and Sanctuary of Soul, new mural and art display. So every 3 months, a new local artist will be selected to come display their artistry. So, we're opening up our walls to the community. We have an upcoming partnership with Salvation Army. And we haven't officially announced that, but it's going to be something very different, something really powerful. And I'm super excited about that. Last but not least, we have created the Intergenerational Jefferson School Foundations Task Force.
Yep.
Okay.
My guy Littles is on it.
Littles.
And I'm going to name drop my people because all of these people are doing impactful work in the community. Jessica Carter, Her Sports, Tristan Cabeza, Come As You Are, Miss Ray, City of Promise, Nancy Burney, Tamika Irvin, Dr. Richard Johnson from Hit the Deck, Honorary Bishop Gohanna. So we've got some great people that are serving as our eyes and ears, that are bringing us information. This group of people have been very instrumental in helping me plan the unveiling event. They've been instrumental in helping me plan the upcoming partnership with Salvation Army. These are my people, and they gave me their yes. So
That's amazing.
Super excited.
Yeah.
Crazy. You hear that big talk? You hear that name dropping?
Yeah, I did. I got a question though. I got a question.
Are you ready?
No, I ain't coming yet. I'm not coming yet. But she said something that we're not from Shaw. A lot of us aren't from Charlottesville that are trying to do impactful work. Vinegar Hill is one thing that always used to come up. Isn't the Jefferson the last standing building of the Vinegar Hill era?
I think that depends on who you talk to, but
that's real talk.
I say it's very safe to say the Jefferson School is the last true vestige of what was taken from us during Vinegar Hill, or what was taken from us during that time.
The important part I see about that is that I see our people complaining all the time that, and excuse my language, white people are trying to take everything from us, right? When the dairy market went up, everybody complained because of where it was placed. When that church was sold, everybody complained, right? So now you have a place where education was taught. It was a safe haven. The floors are still the actual floors that your ancestors walked on, your grandparents that are no longer here. I don't know why they wouldn't come out in Grove to support October 5th and what you're doing. Regardless of what other things may be going on before, after, or during, this is important because if by some chance in 50 years we lose this, we lose a portion of ourselves. Because once we lose it, we never get it back. They don't sell it back to us.
That's a good point, but correct me if I'm wrong, but October 5th is by invitation though.
Invitation only.
Just want to clarify to people listening.
Invitation only, and respectfully, we're almost at capacity. So I feel like we're going to have a good turnout. I hope that this is first to many events that will celebrate the rich history of the Jefferson School. But this is a soft opening, or, we're saying soft, but I think this is a really bold transformation. And I hope everyone feels the momentum that we're gaining here.
Now, before we jump over to Littles too, while we're on that point, for the folks that just heard us say that, and hopefully they understand what October 5th is for, and what it's going to represent and how it's going to catapult. Though, let the folks know though who want to come through about the potential of them learning more about the center, what the center has planned, and things of that sort. If you can just kind of let the folks know who maybe won't be in attendance on October 5th, just a little insight on what they can expect to be engaged.
So we're gonna do a pretty robust social media overhaul after the event, and we're going to piece by piece start unveiling everything to the community.
Gotcha. Cool. So Littles, man. So let us know what the Jefferson School Center means to you. Because for those that don't know, I'm sure you're probably gonna mention it, but Prolific, I guess one of your main meeting spots. But besides that, also the Foundation's task force. Why you decided to join that?
Well, Kim didn't give me a choice or an option. So,
brother, I know that feeling.
You know what I mean?
Voluntold.
Yeah, voluntold. That's how they do you. But the Jefferson School is a start and finish location of my founding organization, Prolific Run Crew. And so it's important for us to, not only show up when it's needed, but also to learn and continue to learn the rich history behind the Jefferson School. And so that's important because there's a lot of folks that, participate in the crew or come out to the crew that, like you mentioned earlier, Razor, that's not from Charlottesville or just don't know the history of Charlottesville.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important for us to expose them to, what that building means to people that's come before us and people that's still here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important. And, I'm also learning myself. I do have history in that building because my grandmother taught in that building when the preschool was there,
Mm-hmm.
and my mom as well. So, I spent a lot of time as a kid in that building. So it hits home for that reason, in the sense of just, I grew up spending a lot of time there, but it's things that I'm learning, each year and each time that we take up space there, of the history that came before us.
That's big, bro.
That's one of the main reasons why I thought it was important to also join the task force, because of the time that's spent there and being very intentional with the work that we're doing. It's just important that we continue to try to, tell the story the right way, because that's a part of our route.
Absolutely. And man, I gotta elaborate on that, because prolific, is this entity represents what it represents, but it's very diverse. And even with the Jefferson Schools members, as well as the folks on the foundation board, right? It's a mixture of people, and I would venture a little to say that a lot of the folks on the board probably are of a different, how can I say, maybe like demographic, so to speak, or status, than even some folks in prolific, or a lot of the people that I know, Kim, you're trying to reach to make sure that they know that the center is for them. So my question to you then, based on all that, is like, how do you find yourself sort of communicating the importance of the Jefferson to the community? When I say the community, I'm talking about like folks our generations that don't feel like that's our spot, or don't feel the importance of it. Like, how do you kind of try to portray the importance of it?
Yeah, and I think that's part of the task force and what Kim was trying to curate with that, because we speak a lot of times where a lot of folks do spend a lot of time there, whether you're coming to grab food from Pearl Island or you're going to Carver and play hoops, as far as people of my generation, right? But I think you can get wrapped up inside of that and not actually understand what that why that building still stands there and what existed in that building before all of this. So for me personally, it's really just continuing to be intentional when sharing things, but also sharing events and just bringing events to the Jefferson School. We've had numerous times of where people like, y'all want to start a route. Y'all like to start a run from here. Have y'all thought about switching one of y'all morning runs to start over here, just to collaborate with the this organization or this organization? We're like, it's important why we start and finish at the Jefferson School. It's important why we don't change our route ever. We run 3 times a week, and we run the same exact route, and we finish at the Jefferson School. We huddle up, we share community events, but also we share about the Jefferson School and the history when we feel like folks may have forgotten of why we even starting there. So I just think it's important to just, be consistent with, your true values and, what you want your people to believe to be true.
What do you think or what do you hope that does for people 50, 80, 100 years from now, thinking about your feet, those that look like you, walking those grounds, running the city, starting from the Jefferson, ending at the Jefferson, and the heritage that I guess you hope that leaves or helps them to feel as they then visit that center?
Yeah, I hope for us with revitalizing and redefining with what Kim is doing, and just with Prolific being consistent each week and not going anywhere, that our people, our Black and brown people, actually understand that this building is for us and that they utilize it. And that's what I would like to see within the next 50 to 100 years, is more of us utilizing this space, utilizing this building, knowing that if you do have a nonprofit and you do need some space to come host a meeting or something, that you can come and use this space, and actually understanding that it is for you. And I think that's just very important. It's a lot of moving pieces with a lot of people here in Charlottesville. it's a lot of growth, but I think it's important that we don't get away from the true history, like something like the Jefferson School.
Yeah, and Kim, elaborate on that real quick, and then Razor got something for you. So folks know if they have a nonprofit, how to take advantage of the free meeting room space. I know that's an initiative you've been pushing lately.
Right. So if you are a nonprofit or an established organization, or even if you're trying to get a nonprofit going or your organization going, you can reach us at events@jeffersonschoolfoundation.com. We have a pretty simple process to utilize the space. So yeah, just a quick email or give us a call. I'm sure we can fit you in somewhere.
That's right.
All right, Little, go ahead and grab the mic.
What you got?
Max.
Max, y'all coming with me on this one.
It's your turn to watch it.
They hyping you now.
Yeah. Hey, look, I need you on this one. What I appreciate for what you're doing is you're born and raised from Charlottesville,
yes, sir.
Right? And this is the elephant I want to talk about. Too often, Charlottesville, I love you. Y'all have embraced me. I've had my family here. I've made my money here. But there are times when you feel that people from outside of Charlottesville have to check in or make sure everything is all right when we actually have the same mission as the people of here, right? And family, I want y'all to understand, as we grow, as we expand, this does not mean that you have to stay with the same old guard. It is okay to embrace new blood to keep the mission going forward. Right. Littles, as you talked about, y'all bring in different people, but you always make sure that everything starts at the Jefferson, ends at the Jefferson. The mindset that you have, right? What would you tell Charlottesville people that want to kind of make sure everything is Charlottesville first when it comes to the people that's doing stuff, and then everybody else fall in line? I think that is a toxic trait that our black community exhibits. What would you say? Because coming from me, I'm an outsider. Coming from you, you're homebred.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think a lot of the generation before me doesn't like change. And I think that is associated, though, with being protective. And in Charlottesville, a lot of folks are very protective because of how stuff has been taken from our black and brown folks here. And the relationship with the university has shown that. And our people have been fighting back to, tell the true history for years before myself. However, for me personally, I'm okay with growth. I can occupy spaces of things whether I felt the intentions may not be true and identify if they are or not. And I think that's always important to actually understand people's approach and understands if people values are where they are supposed to be when they are entering a space as an outsider. And I think that's important. It's just understanding your space and knowing your space. And I've been in a lot of spaces like that have allowed us to grow. So I'm not against that, but I can't approach a space where if someone's feeling protective over that because of how they've been done and tell them scrap that.
Can I give you a little pushback on that, though?
For sure.
Too often we look at where we landed and not where we took off from. So if we look that we all took off from the same spot, regardless if I'm from Orange County and you from Charlottesville, we're still the same family. And that's what I would urge people in Charlottesville to look at. Just because I come from a different zip code does not mean my ulterior motive is to tear down or just take from here.
And I don't disagree with that, but it's folks that has been done wrong where I can't tell them it ain't gonna be done to you again. That's trauma. That's trauma. So like it takes a lot of work to get past that. However,
do we live there though? Like that's the thing. Trauma, we always talk about how it's passed down, right? But do we have to live there? When do we break that generational curse? When do we say, okay, this is what was done, but it has a period to it? And now we have a fresh start.
I'd say when we start doing right by each other.
Well, I also think a lot of people live in fear, and I'm not one of those folks. So like I'm willing to take risks. And I think a lot of folks that may live in fear is easier said than done for us to say step outside that box. I think that is, we're not if we're not living in their shoes, we can't be the one to tell them that it's easier to,
I got you. I just wonder if our children are going to have the same conversation that we're talking about now, because nobody was able to say, look, let go of the steering wheel and get in the passenger seat.
I think it's change, man. Like some people, a lot of folks struggle with change. And, you know, I salute my parents and my dad and my grandparents, man, because they've challenged us to like step out there.
And I got to give Littles his props, because I feel like he's a prime example of how it can work. You know what I mean? Like the way that you bridge, you know, like your homies and then folks who may be new here, but you know, like, but you have a knack to get people together that's doing good work. You know what I'm saying? Like regardless of, you know, where you're originally from, you know, and I think that's what it takes.
And it's important
you got to show that example.
It's important.
Good stuff.
AKA Miss Kim Sheffield. I ain't gonna say no more.
Here we go.
All right.
Here we go.
All right, Kim, you ready to bring it home? You got you know, your final words on what you got upcoming at the Jefferson, to make sure that folks know what the takeaways are from today's talk.
So we are getting ready to reimagine, redefine, and refuel for the future. I expect to see more of the Jefferson School Foundation. I encourage folks to tap in with the school. We're always in need of volunteers or people that have a heart to serve. If you want to get involved, get in touch with us. I'm excited, man. Good stuff is coming, and we've got great people around us, great support. We've got Sarad Davenport, who has been our marketing consultant. So I'm excited to roll all of this out in October.
And Kim, I just want to tell you how proud we are of you, because it's not exactly easy to be the leader of most things, right? And I imagine that you've faced a lot of challenges leading the foundation and this initiative, and just making sure that the center thrives, right? And maybe and having to juggle all that comes along with that, whether it's characters or politics, you know. And I'm sure that is not easy, but I want to thank you and congratulate you on doing it gracefully, doing the hard work, sticking with it, and the city appreciates you for it. Keep going.
Thank you for that.
Keep going.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you guys.
Your hard work doesn't go unnoticed.
Thank you.
Big facts.
Yeah. All right. Well, you know, family, that's it. We appreciate you guys for sharing your Sunday with us. Littles, Kim, we look forward to seeing you on October 5th. Put on your good stuff. Did you give us any of the details about well, it's invitation only. Okay, never mind. Let me scale. let me pull that back a little bit. Okay. So thank you again. We look forward to having you on the show next time.
All right. Have a good one.
Yep.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. IMHO Talk Show. Tell a friend, because per usual, we taking Seville to the world and bringing the world to Seville.
That's right. That's right.
Raise
Shout
it.
out to our live guest.
Oh, definitely.
I got a little ahead of myself at the end of the interview talking about what to wear and things like that to this October 5th event that's going on at the Jefferson School that is by invitation only. I just want to clarify that at some point in the near future, the foundation will have more open and public event where everyone will be invited.
Absolutely. It's 10-year anniversary. I'm a 100-year anniversary or something important coming up.
Something like that. Yeah.
Next year.
That's right. That's right. It's big. But man, so we are, IMHO family, we are in this last quarter of the year. As you can kind of tell by the way our music switches up.
Really?
Like, yeah.
Tell me.
Because at least our theme music.
Okay.
Because the first quarter, we got, Q.
Knuck if you buck.
I'm saying like Q theme song, the show theme song got a little different flavor.
Okay.
And then, actually the third, not really quarter, it's the third. It's like so the first 4 months.
Okay.
Then the second 4 months, and then the third 4 months.
Okay.
So right now, folks can know that we entering in that fall, winter season. Like when y'all hear Keith jump on that joint with Q when they rapping over
very
Common and DJ Premier's 6 Cents. But that being said, this year, I'm curious on y'all's feelings about what we are looking forward to when it comes to IMHO and how we're gonna close out this year, including this being an election year, which is big. So like today we're gonna have none other than our good community partner Sally Hudson. She's gonna talk about the ranked choice voting, which folks probably heard a little bit about. So some other, just only I think a couple other jurisdictions in the whole country have tried this, but she's going to break it down on what it means. We're going to have a good wholesome discussion about it, about ranked choice voting and in Charlottesville local elections and how that kind of changes the game and the way that we look at how we vote. And we're going to have Congress hopeful Miss Gloria Witt, Black female that's running for Congress. She's going to be on next month before the election. But this is, this is huge times, huge elections. And as always, thank y'all family and thank, Max and Razor, because we are a critical part of that. And we don't take this job for granted. True. But that's what I had to say. I'm curious what y'all thinking about.
I think it's important for us to stay relevant, continue to bring our listening audience issues topics that are important to them, discussing those on air. Out in the open, no bars hold, or however you say that. And that's how I hope to finish out the years, to finish it strong. I'd like to see a little more community engagement in terms of reaching out to us to let us know what topics you'd like for us to discuss, what guests you'd like for us to bring on. But most importantly, it's just to continue to keep a pulse of the city and of the world, and discuss those hot button issues.
Mine's very simple.
Those taboo issues.
All I want is for the city of Charlottesville and surrounding counties to look at us as their own. I want them to adopt us wholeheartedly.
I think they do that, Razor.
I mean, publicly. So? No, I mean, they listen. Like we always hear, I listen to y'all every Sunday.
What more you need, Razor?
Now I need them to say,
you need them to roll out the red carpet when you're walking down the street
the
or
Washington
something.
Commanders, that's their football team. Dallas Cowboys, that's their football team, right? I need them to talk about IMHO as Charlottesville's own radio station.
Yeah.
You know,
you got a House resolution from the state. What else you want?
They ain't enough.
They need more.
I need more. I need more.
Not satisfied.
I'm never satisfied. Yeah, but that's simple for me, man. I want people to be proud that this is their own. You know, they know they're going to get the information that had been hidden from them for so long up front and between the three-headed dragon that we have, spoken in a way that the whole city can understand. You know, no elitists, no, thug, no college professor, nothing. All of it. It's one community that feels good. And that's why we joined in with the Jefferson, because that's yours too. You know, so I mean, it all ties in together. You know, we're taking the first step. Y'all got to take the next.
You know, there's an old term called the beautiful struggle. Beautiful struggle, because like we love each other, we love our blackness, you know what I mean? Like we love our people, you know, but is
that a mayonnaise sandwich?
I don't know what he talks about.
Beautiful struggle.
Even true. You know, like an applesauce sandwich.
I can't relate to what either one y'all talking about right now. I'm just saying.
I'm gonna dig back into your childhood now. Don't play with me.
Yeah, but that's just like, but that's just it though, is we, you know, love each other and love the community to an extent to where we remember that the struggle comes along with that. And while there's things that we would like to do different and do better and whatnot, it's like
this is our story.
Yeah, it's our story. It's still who makes us who we are.
Right.
And you know, so I don't want to let that go by on the conversation that you know that you spearheaded that we had with Littles. That does make a difference. And I wholeheartedly believe that it is a domino effect of like, there's trauma that we all sort of work from, but at the end of the day, there has to be that domino effect of change. Like we can't just say that we want to do business better and work together and have group economics and all that if we're not setting the example for, like you said, for future generations. Like, are they going to have the same conversation, or what generation is going to show it differently? And it's also not a blanket and one size fits all either. We got to remember that there's always going to be haters, always going to be naysayers. But I feel like even if it's you need it.
That's your guard.
Even if it's 2 or 3 of us that just shows the example, I feel like history can always look back, because I can even think of people that I know of. You know, I've been around Charlottesville. I'm talking about the good ones. The good ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people that I know of that's big inspirations and encouragement, you know, to things that I do. Because even in the face of adversity, they've been here holding it down and welcome me with open arms. You know, I'm from just outside of Charlottesville originally, but then I've also lived in Charlottesville, and it's you know, so it's just a matter of I even know who embraced me from time that I was a child. And then as I was an adult, seeing the work that was being done and respect that. Because while I get what you're saying, it's like, it's no different than when somebody comes into your home, you know, Max and Razor, it's like, you in my house, it's my house rules. If I say take your shoes off at the door, take your shoes off at the door. So I think that's, you know, it's no different than when we look at white folk coming in, wanting to ally with black organizations. It's like, if you're going to do that, and if your heart's in a good place, then you know, we don't want you in the front.
Right.
Be a good ally and support the way we need you to support. We don't come in there trying to take over.
Yep. No, I agree with all of that. And I think it's important to say that while we, you know, I don't feel like I'm really encapsulating the meaning of this when I say it, but working from this place of pain, because I don't believe it's always a place of pain, or, you know, it's a step or a level that
a lot of times it's
we've all kind of, you know, decided to stand on to then create the healing or bring the healing that we then need. So I don't, you know, some people might misinterpret working from a place of pain.
Charles, you know, that's good. I know I'm sorry. I know we got to take a break. Let me say this last thing, and then I'd like for y'all to comment on it later. When can we get to a point that we accept that somebody may not be our leader, so to speak, but they have enough good information that we can follow and support?
That's big. Yeah. That's what it's about, because we all human, right? Nobody's perfect. You got to let the wheat grow with the tare, as the Bible says. Let God do the separating.
That preacher boy always be coming up out of him on Sunday. He can't help it.
Hey, well, you don't think I go to church before I come in here?
Proud. He's super proud.
Look, I told you, I got to pray and I got to sage and everything before I come in here with you.
Yeah.
I got to put on the whole armor. All right, Max. I think we need to get the break. We got an hour.
Yep, let's go.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Max
Razor.
That's right. That's right. Back like we never left. So tell a friend, tell a friend. Got so much for you. Per usual, giving the people what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we have another great community representative with us that provides such great resource.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, computer wanted to let them know again.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, thank you, computer. We get it. It's in my humble opinion, 101.3 Jams.
Okay.
All right. So we are joined by our good friend, once again, Dr. Andrea Douglas.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Douglas.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you all?
Good. You're looking mighty Angela Davis here today.
Hey, get him.
Looking mighty Black Panther here today.
Yeah, it's the fall.
Don't start none, won't be none.
When somebody tells you who they are, believe it. Miss Maya.
Yeah.
They're it's the fall, so we're switching looks.
No, you look great. You look amazing.
Yeah. But was Dr. Douglas?
Yeah.
I mean, was Dr. Davis an inspiration? I kind of get that vibe too.
Actually, she was.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I've read her autobiography about 4 or 5
Okay.
and I've used to teach it when I taught. Because one of the things I like most about her and her language is that she describes her methodologies as tools. You know, she's never really didactic. She says, I use this tool for this. I use that tool for this. Feminism is a tool for a different set of ways of thinking about things.
Gotcha.
And, you know, I'm a firm believer in bringing in as many ideas as you possibly can in order to then make decisions that are strategic.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah, that she is very important to me.
That is awesome. That is deep. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by none other than Executive Director of the Jefferson School's African American Heritage Center, Dr. Andrea Douglas. So, Dr. Douglas, before we get into the nitty gritty of, you know, particularly what brings you in today, here's a question that I want to ask that I think is crucial because it's how we kicked off the show. It's how we started. It's how we started the show.
And I'm worried about this.
No,
I'm like,
I don't know if you've noticed this, but we've had a few guests come in over the course of the past like 2-3 months, and when they get here, they say, I'm here to talk about blank. They know we veer.
Yeah.
Dr. Douglas did that today.
She did. You know, but we got a good relationship. You can trust me.
I trust you.
You know,
and I'll do my best.
Yeah, I won't lead you off a cliff. You know that. But no, the question I have, because it's even how we started the show, and there's a lot going on right now. I was like, did we ever ask Dr. Douglas's question? Because we always talk about the Heritage Center. And we may have asked you, but I think it's worth reiterating. What does it mean to you personally to be a part of that school, to be a part of the Jefferson School? Like, so if you kind of look at, you know, you and the Heritage Center look at the school from a 30,000 foot view, like, you know, personally, and even when we talk about your activism and the meaning for the Heritage Center to be housed within that Jefferson School, what does that mean to you and the Heritage Center?
Well, it's everything. I mean, people, you know, it's not inexpensive for us to inhabit that space, right? There are other places that an institution like ours could live, but we are the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center because we were created to tell the story of the Jefferson School. And, you know, being someone who's not from Charlottesville, and before I started that job, I spent a lot of time in galleries and places elsewhere. I worked for the university and their museum. And so when I took the job was the first time I really felt like I lived in this place.
Okay.
And then I often say, this is one of the stories of the African-American community here is compelling. That if you want to understand the trajectory of Black people in this country from the minute they are brought here, this is a community that you can do that in, right? And the other part of it is that when I got here, it was really hard to figure out Charlottesville, right? And
why?
Well, because, you know, if you're a historian and you want to write histories, right, and you start thinking about Virginia, let's say, you hear about Richmond and you hear about Norfolk. Charlottesville isn't in the books. And one of the reasons why we even created a catalog before we even opened an exhibition was so that Charlottesville would be a book.
Okay.
Right. So that people could find out more about it. And so, I mean, I can give you a full on history about, you know, land plats from the 1730s that form this place that then forms a system of enslavement that makes this portion of the Virginia the fourth richest location as a consequence of cattle slavery.
Wow.
But this new exhibition that we're opening or have opened, towards a lineage of self, that comes from a line in something called the Credo that was written by W.E.B. Du Bois in 1934.
Okay.
And I don't know it exactly, but I can. He's talking about his belief in the pride of self. He's talking about his belief in the pride of lineage. And so that's why we titled that portion of the exhibition, because what that exhibition traces is that very moment that Black people start to purchase property and build themselves.
right?
Is that to insulate the not just the white slave owners, but the presidents and everything that's in this area? Like it's like 5 of them that held significance in America. So to highlight us, would that diminish them in their eyes? Is that why it's been insulated?
No, I don't think so. I think that it is about, because I think Black people know Black people's stories. There's a moment where white people begin to want to know Black people's stories. And then white people begin to tell the stories that they think are important in their narrative, right? You can always talk about the presidents, but you're never going to be able to divorce those homes from the very people who were working in them. And those very people, though they try, are in the rooms and they're hearing conversations about freedom. They bring with them a sense of freedom. So the very minute that they have the capacity to be free, they begin to articulate that freedom by first buying property, by opening a school, by building churches. And when you go on a tour with me, I take you to Main Street and I point out those 4 churches, not Zion Union, because Zion Union doesn't exist, but those churches are built within 20 years of each other, right? But they're not just any old church, right? They're all brick churches. They're all highly ornamented churches. And by the time you get to looking at Ebenezer, the rebuild of Ebenezer, that's an American translation of an international Gothic style, right? So there's a way in which these people are in their own landscapes building things that articulate who they want to be.
That's right.
Right? So, you know, when you go to the Jefferson School, and just to talk about this logo, right? Look at the front of the Jefferson School, right? On Commerce Street, right? There are diamonds across the front of that, right? There's diamonds across when you're on 4th Street, that from the point that you get to the beginning of the 1926 building to its end, there are diamonds across that. There is an ornament on that building that, although it's a state building, it's still in conversation with all the other things around it, right? So if you can tell those kinds of stories, you're not talking about the kinds of general discourse that you hear that is always a thing about what Black people don't have, right? Or the fact that you can't see the activity of Blackness in our landscape because of gentrification. You, in fact, can, right? You can go in and see a Black vernacular architecture, Black people building buildings that are still here, right? You just have to know these things in order to be to realize those truths, right? And if the overarching conversation is about what we don't have and not on the other side,
that's right,
then this community doesn't have a chance to actualize as best as it can, right?
Like that.
You know, the work that we do is about belonging. We're attempting to resuscitate stories that are already part of us, but put them in a place. So back to your question, why is it important for the African American Heritage Center to be in the Jefferson School? The Jefferson School in and of itself is an artifact. It is a thing that stands in conversation with other things that describes who we are, right?
Love it, love it.
It is the work that we do then creates a space of permanence, right? You come to our permanent exhibition, you can come any day of the week. It doesn't come off the wall. We add to it every day. Towards a Lineage of Self is over 100 stories that begins in with the first purchase of property, 1868, in Kellytown, and takes you all the way through to late 20th century. So this is almost 100 years of activity on the part of Black people. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you know, I love Jordy and his work. Like he's like a mad scientist to me, and I find it highly interesting. Like seeing him present, hearing him talk, and you know, and yourself as well. But I thought about Jordy because I'm sitting here thinking, Max and Reza, like, but how do we make it sexy? Because I hear what you're saying, but I still feel like one of the part is like it's almost one of those things to where if you are in the know, or you know, or like the old saying, if you have an ear to hear, you know, let those who have an ear to hear, let them hear, kind of thing. But it's like, I feel like whether it's generationally or whether it's like,
it's sexy enough to me. I think it's a matter of value.
To us, but that's my whole point. We're sitting here because it's sexy to us. I'm saying to the people who don't find it sexy, but they need to know this because this is what gives you self-worth.
Yeah.
This is what builds your self-esteem.
I'm sorry, Dr.
I mean, but this is part of what I've come to talk about too.
Yeah.
But before I even jump on that, can I just tell you about, this is actually to your point.
Yeah.
Okay, so the exhibition that is in our contemporary gallery is about a woman named Alice Ivory. Let's say you don't know anything about Alice Ivory at all.
Okay.
You walk into that gallery and there are 9 objects in there made by a woman who's using an acetylene torch, right? So she's a welder. And when you see what she can do with metal and fire, and the way she can articulate those objects so that they aren't just a crow. There's a crow with personality. It's not just a dog. You look at that dog and you're like, that's a junkyard dog because it's got aggressiveness, right? There is a buffalo in there that the modeling on it, and then you go to her smaller pieces. So let's say you don't know anything about her. You're just in that room and you have the capacity to marvel. Right? I can tell you today what is the very first piece of art that I ever saw that took my breath away. Right?
That's right.
It was a photograph by Roy DeCarava. I saw it in the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Okay.
Took my breath away. I walked into that Alice Ivory show and all I could think was, holy crap. Now let me tell you her story.
Yeah.
Right? She's born in Whitehall. She goes to the school out there.
Okay.
She goes to Albemarle Training School. She's going 12 miles, traveling 12 miles to go to Albemarle Training School. After she graduates from Albemarle Training School, she goes to Virginia State. Why? Because she can't go to school here.
Right.
And during that period, Black people had to leave if they wanted an education. She's born in 1930. So by the time she's doing that, it's, you know, in the 40s, 50s, right? So she goes to Virginia State and she gets a degree in art education, right? She comes back 1952 through 1960. She's at Burleigh teaching art. She's part of the tradition of Black people from the minute they open a school here that leave here, go get an education at Hampton and Howard and all these other places and bring it back. Right. And when you think about the influence of those institutions on the notion of self and Blackness, what are they teaching our teachers? And what do our teachers come back and teach our children?
Yeah.
Right. There is a moment that we as Black people are engendering into our own children our sense of self.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So
it's almost the opposite of what was happening at UVA with eugenics.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And doing that within a construct and a landscape. I mean, so we're talking 2 different exhibitions, Towards a Linear Self, and we're talking Alice Ivory on the same page, on the other side. But the 2 of them speak to each other in significant ways, right? Because at the end of it all, when you hear our story, and then you walk in and you see what this person has made.
That's right.
How do you not lose your breath?
Right.
How are you not in awe?
Right.
Why would you never see that as sex?
Yeah.
Right. And when people say there's nothing to do in Charlottesville, yes, there is. Go see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that is a master, right? 2 of the works in that exhibition come from the Virginia Museum of Fine Art, right? They're there because Alice Ivory won awards that caused them to enter those works into their collection. If you know anything about the Virginia Museum of Fine Art, it starts in the 1930s. It's one of the 10th, maybe even in the top 5 now because they're adding on museums in the country. And her work is there. Again, you don't have to know too much. You
Yeah.
just need to walk in to that space.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who marvels at the capacity of people to create,
Yeah.
then there's nothing else to do but be in awe of that. And that's sexy.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. Oh,
Right.
thank you for that.
And we as
I love
human
it.
beings by nature are creators. So.
Right. And people who are creating with what people want to say with not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But what we do know how to do is make a way out
That's
of no
right.
way, right?
That's right.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Do more
Now,
with less.
That's right. Now, speaking of like art, that's right. And, speaking of like creation and art and whatnot, like you mind giving us just a quick touch base update on Swords and the Plowshares?
Oh no, yeah. We are in the phase. Look, we're raising money.
Okay.
Let's be honest about that. We have written the request for qualifications, which we will hope to give to our advisory council so they can look at it. The goal is to disseminate that request for qualifications in November, very late, early December.
Okay.
Leaving it out there for a little while, raising the funds. We want to bring as many as 5 artists to Charlottesville. We're going to engage in a series of conversations. The first one is October 24th, and I'm having it with Ian Grandison and C.L. Bohannon. And we're talking about environmental justice, and we're talking about cultural spaces, right?
Gotcha.
Because here the question is, again, back to the work, right? What we know is most of Charlottesville's public parks a good number of them began as plantations. But when they enter in the park system in 1926, they are automatically segregated spaces because 1926 is the racial integrity is the Public Assemblage Act, which is an addendum to the Racial Integrity Act. And the Public Assemblage Act makes it illegal for blacks and whites to occupy public space, right? So in 1926, Paul Goodalow McIntyre buys Washington Park, he buys McIntyre Park, and he buys Belmont Park, right? When you think of that moment, 98% of park space is associated with whiteness and the other 2% black space, right? And that continues until you get further what's known as Fifth Street Park and what is now today known as Tonsford Park, right? So we think about desegregation as a conversation largely about schools and counters and whatever, but it's about parks, right? And not only about parks, but you get your national park, which was supposed to be for everybody, but your state parks, especially in the South, that's when racism lays over on top of it, because the land for the state park is coming from either municipalities or from individuals, and the racial covenants. Remember racial covenants, right? That's what's laid on the park.
So how is the project Swords and the Plowshares engaging with, I assume, the city parks and recs?
We're trying. Yeah, we have been in conversation with them. We have given them some information about what we're doing. We've asked to keep us in the back of their minds as they're thinking about it. We're moving as quickly as we can because we want to do park tours in the same way we did the education to convince people that these were in fact mid-century racist monuments. We still need to educate our community. Our goal ultimately is to create a democratic process which sits in antithesis to the process that allowed those objects to go in the first place, which means we want to hear from Charlottesville, right? We want Charlottesville to come to these conversations. We want Charlottesville to educate themselves. So when we get to this place where we're looking at objects that are supposed to be representative of our equitable values here, but also in conversation with the other objects that have been built that are mostly about monuments to enslavement. We're asking the question, what does a monument in the 21st century look like? That is about, that takes into consideration the history of those parks, takes into consideration that even today within our DNA, Black people in this town only occupy certain parks.
So how much is racism still driving the driving force in all this?
And how much is self-selection the driving force in this? I mean, I know people who have said to me, I don't go to Belmont. Why don't they go to Belmont? Because Belmont used to be a dangerous place for them. What can you do that would allow a Black person to feel comfortable in Belmont Park? Which is not to say Black people don't feel comfortable in Belmont Park, but these are the conversations that one needs to engage in if one really wants to cause a community to be self-reflective and then think about what does it mean to put something on the landscape, right? Because we know what it meant in the past. How do we think about it in the future?
Right.
That's right. Yeah, safe space. You know, like we all should feel comfortable. But it makes me think though, how much of this is trauma? Like if I connect the dots of this conversation, like just the trauma of knowing, whether it's like subconsciously or not, the fact of when we're in spaces with our families or we're in schools with certain names on the buildings, just the aura, right, of knowing that this wasn't safe for my ancestors, or like this person that I'm wearing on my shirt, or whatever it may be, like was someone who oppressed my people, right? So then if you take that trauma and then you try to say, all right, come learn about art, come learn about Alice Avery, while we should, it's almost like that needs to be instilled in us, whether we're the parents of the generation that instills that. But I could understand if people feel sort of a disconnect because they feel more traumatized by history than they see themselves in.
Well, I think that's the whole thing about it. And this is the other part of the conversation that I wanted to have, right? Because this is about capacity and who has the right to tell a story, right? And how does an institution like mine maintain a level of capacity? Right? I can give you a whole lot of numbers. I brought them with me, even about, the number of Black-led organizations in the country, right? The number of Black-led organizations in the arts, and then the number of Black-led organizations that have the size budget that we have. And I want to say to you all, the Heritage Center is doing pretty damn well.
Hey,
right?
That's right.
And not because we were handed anything, because we work hard.
That's right.
Right? But we can't do the work that we do if our community won't support us. And I'm not saying, give me a dollar. I'm saying, hey, I need people to come and sit at my front desk. Right? Because if you come to the Heritage Center, there's only 4 of us that work there. We program almost 300 days out of the year. We can't get it done if we don't have volunteers.
That's right.
Right? We can't get it done if when we put in a new exhibition, you all don't come to the exhibition. Right? If you live here, it costs you nothing to enter our installation. Nothing. Right? It costs you 10 minutes practically. If depending on how you want to go through it. It can cost me 2 hours because I talk a long time, right? But we need people who want to learn this history and want to tell it. We need people who want to greet the community and make it a safe and comfortable place for them. We need people who want to work on our projects. I mean, we had 200 people at Green's Cook-Off. It takes 10 to 11, 12 people to run Green's Cook-Off, right? We'd love it if our community would come to say to us and say, hey, we want to help you do Green's Cook-Off, right?
That's right.
Juneteenth is a huge undertaking for us. Not alone the money, but what it takes to, find the number of people to walk in the parade, to work on the day, to make sure that parade is the thing that our public expects it to be. Again, there's only 4 people who work there. Everything else that happens has to happen with help.
Volunteers.
With volunteers. Right? I think about what I have heard people who participate with us, what they say about it. And they are changed. No one, and I'm not being, I'm some people would describe me as arrogant.
Confident.
You,
Confident.
not you.
I earned that,
Mhm.
right? But I'm not overselling this.
Yeah.
Right? When I say this,
Mhm.
because I can show it to you over and over and over and over again.
Mhm.
When you walk into the Heritage Center, when you spend time there, what you experience, you are irrevocably changed.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And I get it. It's intimidating, but it doesn't have to be intimidating.
That's right.
Especially when you walk in saying, I'm going in there to learn something
Right.
about me.
Right.
Mhm.
Right? I'm not coming in there to learn something about other things
Mhm.
because we don't do anything that isn't about Black people.
That's right. That's right.
Like nothing.
Yeah. It's important to remember too that the winner writes the history books.
Right.
You got to remember
Yeah.
the winner writes the history books, and so we shouldn't have our mouth open. And I'm speaking to myself as well. We shouldn't have our mouth open when other folks come in and step up, volunteer, or want to take positions, whether it's board or whatever, because somebody has to get the work done. Now, it's on us if we want different representation. It's on us to be there again, to control our own narrative.
And those are the opportunities that we offer. And I think when you really when I think about what I have been trying to do now these 11 years is to engage all of this community in a sense of ownership and belonging, right? Ownership. Black people have the right to claim ownership here.
That's right.
No more or less than white people have the right, or anybody else who has the right to claim ownership.
Yeah.
Right? So, and when you can claim ownership, you feel like you belong here. Right?
That's right.
As you start to watch our demographics change, 2,000 people leaving the city of Charlottesville that are not being replaced. You're not going to get people to come into this city until they can see themselves in this space.
Yes, indeed.
Right? You walk into the Jefferson School, there is that opportunity. But if you walk into the Heritage Center, there are two things you learn: that this story is part of a national story, and this story consists of people who have done significant things to create Charlottesville in the way that it exists.
I have a question.
Mhm.
All right. This just came to me. Like listening to you is very inspiring. Like I can only imagine how the family is embracing this. But on the other hand, because of all that we as Black people have been through, right? How do we convince the people that would prefer not to be Black if they had their choice because of the trauma, because of the struggle, because of the having to always prove yourself to be twice as good to get the same recognition, right? How do we get that demographic of people to embrace what is being freely given to them so that they can learn, yes, this might have been a tough time, but this is the resilience that you come from? Because the mindset here, everybody sitting here right now is not originally from here, right? And a lot of times I catch flack because I said the people that's doing things in the city a lot of times are not from here. And that is my truth. But if I'm talking to the people who come from here, whose grandparents is on the wall, or the little girl playing in the street in what was Vinegar Hill or Gospel Hill, how do I get them to embrace that look and not look down upon it because it doesn't look like what 2024 looks like?
That's a really hard question. And if I had the full-on answer to that, I'd be doing I'd be doing better at this. I think that we have a place, right? And whatever happens, it's a place that is in existence. So if you come in, if you never come in, there might be a reason that you come in on that day, on a day. And what I'm certain that you will find on that day that a person of color, Black person comes in, is a compelling story about themselves. Right? We have to see the work that we do as creating a space of permanence, creating some sense of stability when there had not been stability, right? This is a long game. The Heritage Center needs to exist long past me, right? Because this is a long game, right? This is the reason why this is about institution and the capacity for institution to hold narratives, right? If we were gone tomorrow, all the work would be gone. But if we're here 10 years from now, the chances are that someone will walk through here and see something is very high. And that takes me back to this idea that you're not going to walk in and see something that doesn't change you, right?
You know, I had a thought when you were talking earlier and you mentioned that the work that you do at the Heritage Center, these displays, these conversations being intimidating for people that they are about, but we're on the other side of the history. And before you came in today, we were actually having a brief conversation about the Black people in the community working from or doing the community work from a place of pain or trauma. But something you said made me think about this, which is that, you know, as long as it has taken us, and I'm not trying to be a sympathizer, but trying to look at things from holistically, as long as it has taken us as Black people to be able to move away from, and still not all of us have done it, of doing advocacy and community work from a place of pain, to move away from that, shift away from that, you know, it would then be understandable that it may be just as difficult for those who were on the other side of history and administering the pain and trauma that we all and our ancestors dealt with, for it to be just as difficult for them to move away from the mindset, the racist mindset and ideologies that they and their families once had, to be able to engage with us in these spaces, understand our history, and in some way bridge some gaps so that we all have this sense of belonging here, but more from an equitable standpoint.
So
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And, you know, there's this place where you say an institution like the Heritage Center is a custodian. It's a custodian of these histories.
Yeah.
But our goal also is to be that custodian, not for ourselves necessarily, but for those people in the future, right? And that's why I say creating the space of institution is important, right? The work that I do and the narratives that we know about, our goal in providing them isn't so much to think about what's happening today. We want them certainly to inform decisions that are being made. We created the Center for Local Knowledge so that there would be this advocacy place, this policy place, this place where someone could come to us and say, I need this information because I'm about to do this thing. And because of our expertise, we can go find that information and be like, here you go, right? But it's also a place where we teach, right? And we want to teach young people, and we want young people to see that so that they then become engaged in this conversation. The contemporary gallery sits right next to that permanent installation for a reason, right? It is a place where someone in this moment can actually see themselves through the artwork and then begin to sort of move around the place. We're interdisciplinary because we hope that somewhere along the line, whether you enter it through theater, whether you enter it through film, whether you enter it through exhibition, that there is a place where there is a meeting, and that meeting leads you to some more. Right? I get this piece about intimidation because people enter in these spaces feeling as if they're being asked to know something that they don't know already. Right. And what we're hoping is that our community first says, we trust you to be the steward of this thing that's important to us. And then says, we hope that through our participation, you're hearing us and listening, right? Because that's the thing about capacity. If you're not coming through the door, I don't know what you need. If you're not willing to work with me and tell me what you want, I can't get you what you need, right? That's why I came here, not just to talk about these exhibitions, but to also say, Charlottesville, 10, almost 11 years we've been here.
We here.
We're not going anywhere.
That's right.
Right? Our tagline is community-led, community-driven. We want you all to come in, volunteer with us. We don't have the capacity. The numbers that I can show you, there are 250 African-American arts, Black-led arts organizations in this country. The majority of those have budgets below $100,000, right? We're considered a mid-range institution because our budget is almost $1 million, right? But we still can't afford to do and hire all the people. Again, 4 people work there. We pay rent, right? We write grants for our exhibitions. We have salaries to pay, just and at the most basic levels to do that. And this institution could never have made it for 10 years if it weren't for the volunteers.
But Dr. Douglas, when you make an exhibition of IMHO talk show in 50 years, make sure I'm out in a fountain, with water coming out or something like that. Get my good side. That's all. You said ask for what you want, right? So I'm telling you what I want now.
And I'm going to put that down on a piece of paper somewhere.
So we got it recorded.
Dr. Douglas, we talked about a lot, but did we hit all the high points in terms of events and things like that you want to cover?
Well, what's coming up is just to let everyone know that we will be starting to do a series of Thursday afternoon lunch tours. And then we're doing Saturday tours. So again, go to our website, sign up for a tour, come through. We're going to be sending out specific invitations to groups, right? We're really wanting to be as active as we can. Just to your point, how do we make this happen? It is a meeting of us and our community in order to do that. COVID slowed us down quite a bit. And so we're trying to gear back up and trying to get back to what we do well, and hoping that our community, meaning our Black community, will come along with us.
And it speaks volumes to just still be standing post-COVID. Particularly when you're talking about like that you are a space that's all about congregating, right? And about traffic. So so it speaks volumes of y'all's tenacity to still be standing.
We opened right away. When COVID happened, the Heritage Center opened. We had that moment when we were closed, but in September, the minute that we could open, we opened. And we opened because, you can walk into a gallery with nobody in there and you can just sit down. Right? The idea of respite and quiet, that's also part of it, right? You can just come in and sit. You don't have to participate. You don't have to engage, but you can be there with your own thoughts. Right? And sometimes that's a necessary thing. We've taken over and some additional space that was once part of Common Grounds. So we're working on trying to think through what it would look like if we could use that space as a meditative space. For our people, working with practitioners as a collective. So those are some of the things that we're doing that are coming online soon.
Awesome.
Yeah. Good work. Good work. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having
Rich
me.
conversation. We'll be right back after this.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis. Only on 101.3 Jams.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in this city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue, especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay aligned with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max, Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
I am HO Talk Show. Sir Charles.
Smacks.
Razor.
That's right. Back one more again. Top of the hour, bottom of the show. In Seaville world. Glad you're here with us because you could be anywhere else. But
that's right.
It's good because we have none other than the highly esteemed great herself, Sally Hudson. Sally Hudson, good afternoon to you.
Always great to be with you.
Always a pleasure, and love to see that you are still on the battlefield because you definitely have a heart for the community and do great work. So you're much appreciated. And you know, as we've been saying, you know, Max and Razor, this is yet another election year. You know, it can't be understated that it may be one of the biggest. And you know, Sally's here in particular to talk about something called ranked choice voting. There's even an initiative right now, Ranked Choice Virginia. And so, though, and we're going to get into even how at a recent city council meeting, local Charlottesville government has approved ranked choice voting for local elections. And as I understand, it's been done in a couple of other jurisdictions as well. So we're going to break it down because there's a lot of questions, Sally, as I'm sure you imagine. You already know that because you came with a pamphlet.
That's right. I come prepared.
Whenever somebody make a pamphlet, that means y'all don't understand.
Right. There's going to be questions. That's why we're here.
Yeah. So, but before we do that, though, so it's 2024, Sally, and we're approaching a massive critical election. And, you know, it's a presidential election, you know, amongst other things. And, you know, like I get disturbed because so many times we look at the presidential elections like they are like they mean so much more. And a lot of times, so many people, it's the only time they pay attention to elections.
That's right.
You know, and I know you're one, you've been on here before talking about the importance of local elections. But that being the case, 2024 kind of just shed your hopes, sort of your encouragement, you know, to our listening voters when it comes to the importance of this election this year.
Well, there's so much on the ballot this fall, whether we're talking about president or the folks running for Senate and the U.S. Congress. There's so much that gets done at the local level that affects our lives, like our schools. But there's an awful lot that happens in Washington, D.C. that affects our daily lives as well, whether you're talking about healthcare or housing or all the support we need to get entrepreneurs and small businesses off the ground. So whoever you are, wherever you are, there's something on the ballot that matters to you this fall.
That's right. That's right. Very well said. All right. So you ready to get into it, Max?
Let's go.
Speaking of what's on the ballot. So ranked choice voting. I guess, Sally, before we even dig into like that itself, first kind of start us with the beginning of this journey leading to getting it enacted, because you were present at Charlottesville City Council meetings, right? So kind of tell us how this initiative, you know, first came to be, and then, you know, how it led you to Charlottesville, and then now what does this mean for our voting populace?
So this has been a long time project for me. I've been at this now for going on 6 or 7 years. This was, for me, my top priority as a policy project coming out of the 2016 election.
Okay.
Because we saw an election that was so divisive, where we had candidates really just trying to tear the country apart. And a lot of people were asking, what can we do about that? There's got to be a better way to go about politics. And in my mind, ranked choice voting is the answer to that question.
Okay.
If you are new to ranked choice voting, we say it's easy as 1, 2, 3. In a ranked choice election, you don't just vote for one candidate. You get to rank them in the order that you like them. So you get a first choice, you get a second choice, and you get a third choice. And then when all those ballots are cast, we start by counting up all the first choices. And if somebody's got majority support from the community, if they've actually won broad support, then they win the election. If you got somebody who's got 60% of the votes, they're in. That's the winner. But if nobody has clear support from the breadth of the community, then we knock off the lowest vote getter and we ask those voters, who was your second choice? Who's your backup? And we transfer their support to their second choice candidate. We call it an instant runoff, and it keeps going until you get down to a head-to-head between the top two, and you find the person who genuinely has support from the part of the community. And in that way, ranked choice voting really encourages candidates to reach out to a broader range of voters to try to build coalitions and bring people together around community priorities. And it gives voters way more power at the ballot box. Because I think we all know what it feels like when you go in to vote sometimes and you feel torn between getting to vote for who you really like and voting for somebody who you think can win. And ranked choice voting solves that problem. You never have to worry about wasting your vote on somebody who might not be the front runner for everybody else. You get to put your favorite first, And if it turns out that not everybody agrees with you on that, and that candidate gets knocked out, you will still get a say in the final decision. And so you don't ever have to feel that tension between voting your conscience and voting for somebody who you think can win.
Okay. Now, tell us about your presence within Charlottesville City Council. Is this something that's being supported by our delegates and our representatives? Because I'm curious on the significance of Charlottesville versus it being maybe like a wider push, maybe like for our district, for instance, instead of Charlottesville.
Great question. Yeah. So states that have adopted ranked choice almost always start at the local level because it is different. It is a shift. And so communities try it for city council, they try it for mayor, for county board, and then it grows up for there. So for example, in Maine, they now use ranked choice voting for all their elections, all the way on up to president. But it started back in 2011 when Portland, Maine started using it to elect their mayor. And within a decade, they were using it for everything. So we think about what's going on in Charlottesville as a pilot project. What has happened here is that city council has adopted an ordinance that would make us use ranked choice voting for next year's city council election in June of 2025. So if you are focused on how you're voting this fall, what's on your ballot in November, this is not yet. This is something that's coming down the road next year. But if you're an early bird, if you're paying attention, now's a good time to start talking about it. We will use this to vote for city council in the primaries next June. And the hope is for people like me who've been working on this for a long time is that we can do what Maine did and build this up from the local level, get communities like Charlottesville, like Arlington, which already does this, that are a little more forward thinking, a little more willing to be on the cutting edge, get used to it here, get comfortable, and then try to grow from there.
Okay. And so in terms of runoff votes, are the runoff votes a whole vote to your second selection, or is it a percentage of that vote that runs off?
Great question. It depends on how many people you're electing.
Okay.
So if it's a single winner race, like somebody's running for president or somebody's running for Congress, then the number of votes you need to win is half. You need to get more than half the votes. And in that case, everybody gets exactly one vote. But if you're electing more than one person, if you're doing city council, for example, where we sometimes have 2 or 3 seats open at the same time, then it gets a little more complicated. And I think this is what that you are hinting at. In a ranked choice election with more than one seat, you don't need half the votes to win. If you've got 2 seats up, you only need a third of the votes to win. And the reason why is that if you're trying to elect 2 people and you found 2 people who each have more than a third, then nobody else can have more than them, because there's only 3/3 out there. So if you 2 have more than a third, then you can't have more than a third as well. So we know these 2 are the favorites. And Max is introducing this idea of what happens to a fraction of a vote. Suppose that you are the front runner and you need a third of the votes to win, but you actually get 40% of the votes. Then there's people who voted for you. You've got more support than you need. And we want to make sure that those people, those extra votes, those surplus votes, can still be part of choosing the next person. And so in an election with more than 2 people, that extra slice, that 7 over a third, is going to get redistributed to their next choices. So it does get a little more complicated when you've got more than one person that's going to get elected. That's why we usually start by teaching people the single winner version, because the ballot is the same for you either way. If you're a voter, you are doing first choice, second choice, third choice. And what we do with those extra votes, if you've got more than one person up, is all handled by the computer. It doesn't change your incentives as a voter to express your preferences.
Now, that's the part that kind of gets me.
Yeah, that's right.
Now I'm not a math whiz. You know, I'm gonna put that up front, right? But is there a scenario? Like, could there be a scenario? Because I imagine that, you know, the brain trust behind this has weighed all the potential scenarios. So I'm curious if there could be a scenario to where my number one choice would have won if I did not pick a second choice, meaning that if I would not have given a vote to my second choice, they maybe wouldn't have had enough votes to win. Does that make sense?
That's a perfect question. And that is exactly the problem that ranked choice solves.
Okay.
In a ranked choice election, you never have to worry about hurting your favorite by using your second or your third votes. And that's not true with our elections right now. Okay. If you are used to thinking about how we currently vote for city council, you've got one column on the ballot, and when there's 3 seats up, you get to bubble in 3 people. But if you've got someone who you really like, who you're really committed to seeing that person on council, you will sometimes see voters or candidates encourage you to single shot and only use 1 vote. Because if Razor's my favorite and I want to make sure that he gets in, if I give any more support to you two, I'm like raising the bar that Razor has to meet. And so you can risk diluting your vote, watering down the power of your vote for your favorite by using your other 2. And there's no reason we should do that to voters, to make them have to play games with their ballot and decide what's the most powerful way to express my preferences. That's why in a ranked choice election, when you say Razor's my favorite and you're my backup, your support will only start transferring to your backup once your favorite has won. We keep your whole vote with your favorite candidate until they have secured their spot. And only if they have more support than they need, does your extra support start transferring to your second choice. And that's what makes the ballot more powerful for the voter, is it holds out for your favorite as long as they're still in the running. If they get knocked out, if they get eliminated, then your vote goes to your second choice. But as long as they're still in it, your vote stays with them.
I have a question for you. I know you say how you describe that, but doesn't this also eliminate the power of like the big dollar? Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm getting at, right?
Say more.
Okay. All right. I like it because I've seen people go out here and they got influential friends that have big, deep pockets and they control everything. They got more signs in the yard. They got more, so a lot of people feel like, okay, that must be the candidate because I see them everywhere. You know what I'm saying? We were riding through the county where I'm from and it looked like the big signs that you saw looked like everybody was for Trump. And I explained to my wife, like, no, that's just for the farmers. There's a lot of land in Orange County. So you see these signs, but they're only for the farmers. But that's not the majority of how, my county feels, I think. So when I see ranked choice voting, doesn't it dilutes the power of just the big dollar because you get more than 1 vote, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, the candidates who are most advantaged by ranked choice voting are the coalition builders. Because if you think about what this does to how you run as a candidate, I may not be your favorite. There may be somebody else on the ballot who's your number 1, but I still want to reach out and be your number 2. And so like maybe there's somebody else who's running and your number 1 thing is education and there's a teacher on the ballot. And you're like, I'm going to put that person first. But you could have somebody else say, I love what she's doing on education. Can I talk to you about my transit policy? I'm super focused on wanting to get bus lines and on this, that, and the other street. And so you have you are encouraged to acknowledge what you have in common with other people. And even if you can't be somebody's number 1, you want to work and be their number 2. And so that encourages the people who do the more grassroots campaigns, the ones who are out there talking to a lot of people and bringing people together, as opposed to just like, trying to create the most visible presence. And a bunch of people don't know why they're voting for them at all.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot to understand.
It's a shift for sure. That's why we're getting started early. I'm not going to pretend like this is obvious and immediate.
Yeah. So let's talk about the community engagement that has been done to hear from the people that this is going to directly affect about whether or not they were or are interested in ranked choice voting that led up to ultimately the approval by City Council.
I think that's a great question. And to be honest, I was a little frustrated that City Council did not do a more robust engagement process in advance of the vote.
Okay.
They first gave their indication that they supported this back in February.
Okay.
And in February, that was when the registrar came to a City Council meeting and she said, we can do this if you want. Like, we've got the technology. We can do what Arlington did. We have the logistics in place. And at that time, as somebody who cares really deeply about ranked choice, I was really encouraging them to do what Arlington did, which was then to open a big public comment period and say, we want to hear from the residents about this. And I was kind of nudging them on the side and being like, hey, you want to hear from people before you do this. And they're like, we're good. We got, we got the information we need. We came up to the vote in August. That was, they put the resolution up and everybody said, oh yeah, we still support it. Let's do this. And then about a week before the final vote, they came to the realization that you did, which is like, hey, we didn't actually do a structured process to hear from people about this. We heard from people with strong feelings, and all those people were supportive, but we didn't really proactively reach out. I wish they had.
Okay.
But I think that the saving grace here is that this is just a pilot. It's just for next year's primary. There's going to be a lot of community engagement between now and next June. Hopefully it will go well, but if it doesn't, it's not a permanent switch. And if the feedback from the community is, hey, this isn't really what we want to stick with, then we can always reassess them. But I do wish they had done more engagement on the front end.
Let's talk about the equipment. You mentioned that in your response just now, and I know there's this issue of certified versus approved voting equipment, and people have concerns one way or another. Can you explain that to us?
Oh, it's an interesting question. So the state code, but go way back on this. Part of the reason this is legal in Virginia is because I carried legislation on it in the General Assembly back in 2020 to give cities the right to do this. And there is a part of state code that describes how the state approves equipment that you use in elections. And that chapter, that like paragraph, uses both the word certified and approved. And the state's attorneys will tell you that they're synonyms. They're like, these two words mean the same thing. For a while, our registrar was concerned that they don't mean the same thing. We got a bunch of lawyers involved. They came back and said, these two words mean the same thing. So it was a fair question to ask. I'm glad that our registrar raised the question. I think having a very detail-oriented registrar is a good thing. But ultimately, we got all the people together to say, hey, it's annoying that that chapter in the state code uses two words for the same idea, but ultimately, as far as the state's attorneys are concerned, it's the same thing.
So I have a question, and I think, well, maybe just a little clarification, because maybe this answers even what I was asking earlier. See, I knew the pamphlet would come in handy. See, I'm over here reading. So the rounds, and I think this kind of feeds off of Max's point too when you talk about the equipment and stuff. So what does the rounds look like, and how does this impact the polling places? Because I'm curious, on sort of the sanctity of that, because we already live in a time where everybody's questioning how many fake votes there are and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious if you could break down like what the rounds look like, the impact on the polling places, and if this is carbon copy. You said it was Vermont or Maine? Maine, yeah. So I wonder if this is carbon copy of what Maine does, or is it adjusted for Virginia?
So your experience as a voter will be the same. You'll go to your same polling place. You'll get a ballot printed out just like you currently do. It'll have first choice, second choice, third choice on it. It'll look a little different for the printing, but you'll feed it into the same machine and it'll get scanned exactly the same way. So there is now software that the state approved and certified and now makes available to the localities for tabulating the votes. And all that happens by computer. I mean, they literally just take the same information out the back end of the scanning machines and they use a laptop to count up all the votes. So at this point, the technology handles all the time cost of it. But your paper ballot experience is exactly the same as it will be now.
Okay. But I'm curious about the polling place, because is it a literal round where what happens in round one? Because I noticed it's saying your first choice is counted in round one. What does that look like?
So all of that happens instantly. Like this calculation of how many people got first choice votes, that happens in a second on the computer, and then they immediately transfer all the support. It just looks different when they publish the results. Because instead of there just being one column that says, ABC got this many votes, you see a columm for the first round, and then you see that candidate eliminated, and then you see the next rounds. In fact, I can pull it up on a computer. It's real easy to see. It's a super, one of the things that's challenging about talking about on the radio is it's a super visual concept. And that's partly why it's so important to get out in the community and talk with people. And in particular, to practice, like get a real ballot, make a real decision, see the results. And once you get that feedback loop, then it tends to click for folks.
Yeah, and we did put the ranked choice va.org on the post as well, as people can go to the website. But thank you for explaining that, because that definitely cleared a lot up for me, like understanding, on how that first choice in round one works. And I think that may be a critical understanding for a lot of people, for them to get like, oh, okay, so that's how my first choice still really, really matters. You know?
And sometimes you'll hear people call it an instant runoff because it does happen instantly.
Okay.
It's not like people, it's just like what you see in a lot of southern states where they have real runoff elections, where like everybody votes and then they find the top two and they drag everybody back to the polls and they vote just between the two of them. Like they do that in Georgia, they do it in Louisiana, a couple other states. But that's a real big waste of time and money. And often people don't hear about the second election. And so you see drop off, you see folks not come back. There's no reason we have to drag everybody back to do a runoff election. Like it's 2024. We've been doing bubble tests our whole lives. And the computers can scan that up and just do it automatically. So it's a big time saver.
So I can imagine, to Razor's point too, that the issue with the big dog candidate, the one with the most money or whatever the case is, not liking this. Because I was going to ask you like why, or what's the reason where maybe some of your colleagues are against this. And I can imagine that's probably the main reason. And so like, are you hopeful though that this can reach across the aisle and like people would support this? Or is it like, if you're a big money candidate, there's no reason you would support this?
Well, I think it's important because you said both reach across the aisle, which is about parties and people and coalitions. And then there's money, and there's big money in both parties. And that's what I love about this is it encourages people to build coalitions that are rooted in the voters and not so much rooted in the donors. And I think what you're hitting on, like why might some people oppose this, is all about something rooted in our current election system that we don't think too hard about, but it can be really problematic. If you think about our current city council election system, where when there's 2 seats up, everybody gets 2 votes and the person with the most vote wins. That sounds easy. It sounds simple. The people with the most votes wins. But there's no requirement that those people have broad support. The people with the most votes could just be 40% of the population, and everybody else could be split across some other options. But just because they were the biggest, often because they were the front runner, they had the biggest campaign, they could get the most votes, just from their base. They didn't actually have to reach out to a broader range of people. And that's what big money does in elections. Like, especially if you see, 4 or 5 candidates on the ballot, there's often one front runner and they're gonna, get ahead, and then all the other people are gonna split up the votes. This solves that problem. And so if you're somebody who wants the voters to be more empowered with more options, if you want the candidates to be encouraged to build those coalitions, then this is something that could excite you.
So in your opinion, is it solving a problem that Charlottesville is having? And this is why I asked this. I think what's on a lot of people's minds is whether or not we are doing away with, at least for the upcoming local primary, doing away with the system that is in fact broken for us, right? And I'm listening to the things that you say ranked choice voting fixes. But is Charlottesville dealing with the situation where we have several candidates running for council, and something like ranked choice voting would help us to be able to sort out our picks? Are we dealing with the vitriol in the campaigns that we're seeing at the presidential election or presidential level? I haven't necessarily seen that, but doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Are we in some way kind of blocking? Charlottesville claims to be Democratic. Everyone that sits on council claims to be Democratic. So does ranked choice voting solve a problem by blocking out one political party versus another? So
you asked so many good questions. Yeah, you asked so many good questions there, and I'm going to try to hit on several of them. The first is what's the problem that this is solving in Charlottesville? And I told you that this is something that I've been working on for like 6 or 7 years. So go back to the council race of 2017. That fall, there were 3 main candidates on the ballot. There was Nakai Walker, there was Heather Hill, and there was Amy Lawford.
3
that
women.
Was a great example. 3 women.
And a minority
woman. And a great example
Mm-hmm.
of a race where 2 people were going to come out and candidates were telling people to single shot. They were out there telling voters, you should only use one of your votes because you want to make sure you elect me. And ranked choice voting solves that problem. So that for me was the inspiration when I saw that at the local level. It has taken a while to get us here because we had to go to Richmond to get the legal support. We had to get all the technology ready in Virginia. We have not seen a recent election that had that same sort of single shotting dynamic where voters had to choose between using all of their votes and only using one. But it could easily happen again. given the way that our votes are currently structured. And there's no reason we got to do that to voters. Like, I often have people ask me when they're going to the polls, like, I get 3 votes. Am I supposed to use all of my 3 votes? Or like, does that hurt me or help me? Like, that doesn't have to be a problem. Just tell people to rank them in the order that you like them. So there's that piece, which is, when's the last example we had?
Yeah.
And I would say there are lots of other things that we can do besides this to encourage more people to run for Charlottesville City Council. In particular, I'm personally very supportive of the measure that they recently passed to raise the salary, because I think that serving on council is out of reach for a lot of people financially. So there's other things that we can do. I think there are other things we can do to make public service more accessible for a wider range of people.
But you think this will bring out more candidates?
I don't think in this city that's going to be one of the consequences.
Okay.
I think that can happen in other elections. I don't think that's what's holding more people back from running in Charlottesville. But you said something that I want to get back to, which is about the partisan dimensions. Right now, we have a Democratic primary and a general election, but the general almost never matters. Like, that election between Kyle Walker and Heather Hill and Amy Lawford was one of the last times that a general really mattered in Charlottesville City Council. Usually the Democratic primary is basically the whole show. Cities that adopt ranked choice voting will often get rid of their primaries and just do one election in the fall, because you don't have that problem with the vote splitting. Like, you've got a way to handle what happens if a lot of people run. And I think that has a lot of benefits. One, it shortens the campaign for people who want to run. And I think that draws out more candidates. I think it's expensive to run for 11 months. I think, saying you got to do this for 4 months between July and November is like more manageable for people. I think it puts the candidates in front of more people. I think if you hold an election in June, it's only people who are really plugged in who vote. Like, a lot of people don't know that they need to vote in June. And so they miss out on that. And that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing if candidates have to talk to the widest range of people possible. And so that prospect of combining ranked choice with moving to council elections in November that mattered, instead of just having them be a foregone conclusion, that could be a really powerful thing. Like, imagine if all the people who were going to show up to vote this fall were also going to be voting on city council, and that hadn't already just been decided back in June in a quieter election that fewer people paid attention to. I think we might have counselors working harder to pay attention to issues that appeal to a wider range of people.
But the more elections I have, the more money I can raise, Sally.
Oh,
You're missing
see,
the point.
now you understand the industry, right?
Kinda-
In Virginia, we have elections every year. We have primaries every June. You're doing elections basically every 6 months. There's a lot of money in that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we are talking none other than Miss Sally Hudson with Ranked Choice Virginia, and that website is rankedchoiceva.org. Yeah. So we for some reason this made me think of this. I'm curious your thought on this. Do you think this could lead into back? I guess this may have been like around the Federalist days of when your second choice in a federal election was the vice president. Do you think something like this kind of stems from that?
That's an interesting historical play. Yeah. I mean, I think if my memory is right, the reason we moved to tickets instead of having the second vote getter be the VP is that it turns out the VP and the president have got to be on the same page. Like, it's a pretty dysfunctional thing in terms of their job duties if those two are like at each other's throats. And so we decided that we're going to elect both executive positions on a ticket so that those people are on the same page. And so that I think was solving a different problem. Gotcha. But what I think what you're raising is a good question, and that I hope that the ranked choice conversation opens up, is there's a lot of things that we've been doing in this country with elections that may or may not make sense, and we just don't talk about it. And there's a lot of systems, like whether it's the Electoral College, whether it's single choice elections, all of that. And in the US, we've often been taught to say that American democracy is like the shining example and you couldn't possibly tinker with it. And I think we are in a place in our politics where people are tinkering. Like, this may sound new to us. Australia has been voting this way for a century. Ireland has been doing it for almost that long. And now cities across the country and in the US are doing it too. Whether or not you think this is the right way to go, I hope that you're one of the people who's thinking we have options. There are other systems we could be using to meet all of these needs, and I'm glad those conversations are happening.
Yeah. So we have a question for a listener. You want to go first, though?
Yeah. When Sally, when you said something about choices, right? I tend to see back in history books where when we have choices, the opposition steps up to try to limit how people can vote. They start coming up with, I'm gonna check your driver's license. Are you a citizen? Are you, do you have any felonies? Like all these different type things. What safety measures can we put in to where people have, let's say people that's been previously incarcerated, they got their rights back, right? And now that person may have a real impact in voting, because they're like, a lot of people say, man, I'm not voting for nobody because I don't like either candidate, right? But now you have somebody that you might like that actually stands a chance because everybody votes him as number 2 and they actually end up with more votes. What safety measures can we put in that protect the voter? Because I want choices. I want the ability to have my voice heard, but I don't want to be beat up every day trying to get that point. I don't want to be the one walking across Selma Bridge. I don't want to be the one attacked by the German Shepherd. They might not actually use the actual dog now. They might have it to where they do things to where, okay, we're having a city election, so I'm going to raise the rent so high that you have to move outside of the city. So, they're smart. People are smart. So what things can we do along with all the legislation that you're doing that protects the voter as well?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I actually just yesterday, I was downtown talking with a lawyer here in town who runs voter protection statewide for Virginia. And she talks a lot about what that looks like now. Like, it may not be a policeman with a dog, but there are still some precincts where you will see law enforcement come park outside of the polling place. And just that presence makes that place feel less welcoming to some people who have every right to be inside casting their ballot. And so that is what voter protection lawyers do, is that they spend all of their time thinking about all of the little ways that we can make someone disenfranchised. I mean, I remember an interaction I had during my last election that will forever live in my mind was when they changed the polling place in Tonsler Park. Remember that small building is not a great room to have to get a bunch of people into. And so when they drew the new precincts, they split it up now. And some people voted Buford and some people voted Johnson. And an older woman came to Tonsler to vote. And I happened to be there at the time and was saying, ma'am, we have new polling places. Can I help you? What's your address? Can we help you find where you're going to? And she was like, sweetheart, I've been voting here longer than you've been alive. Do not tell me my polling place has moved. Like, I know people play tricks like that, right? And I could hear like the fear and the genuine, both like well-earned wisdom that something wasn't right. And we ended up getting her to the right polling place, but I was like, I'm going to let you Google this yourself. I'm going to let you find your way to the .gov website yourself, look up your address yourself, and know that the government is telling you this is your new polling place.
Can you vote if you've been drinking or smoked marijuana?
The only thing that would remove your voting rights is a felony conviction.
No, I'm talking about like when you said the police are at the, like, make it intimidating.
Oh,
if
I see.
I smell like, if I've had a drink, right? Or if I've been smoking marijuana, can that be a reason that they can stop you or mess with you and not allow you to vote?
Not legally. There's no law that says you have to be sober to vote. But if you've got a cop who's outside and somebody knows that they may be intoxicated, then you could wonder whether they feel comfortable passing that vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Reza is definitely on the same trajectory as this listener that we have. But Max, you want to go though?
No, I was just going to say, I'm even thinking about the person who needs someone to go back to the voting booth with them, because I just don't understand this and whether or not something like that would be allowed and how that can turn into a situation.
Oh yeah, great question. So absolutely. And whether that is somebody who's just not used to it and has questions, whether you've got somebody who's got a disability accommodation, that is exactly the work that the registrars do to accommodate every voter. So for example, sometimes you'll have older folks whose hands aren't as steady as they used to be. And so filling in a bubble may be easy to us, but it's not easy to everybody. And so they can have either a friend or a family member go back with them, or they can have a polling staffer go. And there's procedures in place so that if you need somebody else's help to fill out your ballot, if you've got people who have visual limitations, like they can't read as well, just because they can't see the small print, like you can have assistance. And in particular, one of the most important investments that the city is going to make in this election that they've already allocated funding for is extra staff at polling places on election day, because people are going to have more questions the first time.
You said something when you talked about filling in the bubble. So this election system is not going to be electronic. So you won't be completing that on a computer screen, right? You'll actually be filling in what we call a Scantron sheet or whatnot, and then inserting it into the reader.
Yep. Just like your all paper ballots. In Virginia, we have all paper ballots. And that means that if there ever has to be a recount, you can do it by hand.
Okay.
Gotcha. So Sally, as I guess we kind of wrap it up, I have a listener who's gonna stretch you a little bit. They're elaborating on the importance and how this sounds like how this can impact disfranchised voters.
Okay.
So let me just read through. So it says, what are your thoughts on the homelessness crisis downtown? What is a policy that you would like to see implemented regarding homelessness on a national level? So that's kind of one part, but then they elaborate and says, what are we doing to encourage the inclusion of the unhoused population's votes, and do their voices not count? Candidates campaign all over the country, but we haven't seen their focus on low-income housing developments and their residents. Understanding that financial support is a big part of campaigns, but knowing that the votes are what elects the candidates, why is that we are not campaigning in Black neighborhoods?
So there's a lot in there.
Let
me go for the first part.
Okay.
At the local level, I think the most important thing that we need is a year-round, broad access shelter, because we've got shelters that are only available sometime in the year. We've got shelters with a lot of restrictions on who can and cannot be inside. And I think that everything I'm hearing from City Manager Sanders says that there's a big project in the pipeline, and I'm looking to him for more information about what the next steps look like. You asked what we can do to encourage more voting participation by unhoused residents. I think one of the most important things we can do, Virginia did very recently, and that is adopt same-day registration. Same-day registration means that you can roll up to a polling place on election day and register on the spot. And so they will talk to you about, where is your current place of residence like tonight? Where are you laying your head tonight? And you can vote. And that is a critical thing to do for people who have unstable housing.
They just need photo ID, I'm assuming?
You don't need a photo ID.
Okay.
You need some kind of documentation, but you can swear an affidavit.
Okay.
So we actually have a new system as well, where if you do not have ID on you, you can cast what's called a provisional ballot.
Okay.
And that means that they'll set your ballot aside, and you have a set number of days to work with them to confirm your ID. And they have a lot of different ways that you can do it, whether it's like utility bill, just something that links your name to your person. And once you've done that confirmation process, then they count your ballot.
Okay.
The same-day registration is huge for a lot of people. It's huge for students. Like, we'll see thousands of students at PVCC and UVA cast same-day ballots this year, because they will have missed the deadline, they moved into a new apartment, whatever, and they'll need to change their registration on the spot. It's been huge in towns with a lot of young people.
Okay. And one other thing that I pull from this is that sounds like maybe a question could be, do you feel like this will encourage more votes? Because we do know that a lot of times Black communities like only get spoken to or visited when I need your vote.
Yeah.
Right. If we're honest about it. So do you feel like that even maybe ranked choice voting could maybe encourage more voting from those particular communities?
So I would love, I know that we're maybe beginning to run out of time, but I would love to send y'all some more information about that. There is fantastic evidence coming out of the big cities who have adopted this, that ranked choice voting is a game changer for the election of candidates of color and female candidates.
Female for sure.
And what we hear a lot from the female candidates is that they are coalition builders. They are the people who like to go out and say, You should like me because of schooling. You should like me because of buses. You should like me because of housing.
Mm-hmm.
And so the female candidates have really thrived in this environment. New York City, biggest, most diverse city in the country.
Mhm.
It's bigger than Virginia. There's
Mhm.
more people in New York City than there are in all of Virginia. So their city council is basically like a state legislature. It's got
Mhm.
51 members. When they first went to ranked choice voting in
Mhm.
2001, they, for the first time in history, elected a majority female city council. 31 of their 51 members were women, and vast majority women of color. Like 26, I think, of those 31 women were women of color, which means that body now looks like that city.
Mhm.
Like the people who live and make up New York City now feel represented on their city council.
Mhm.
First Black mayor of Minneapolis was elected via ranked choice.
Okay.
Just like across the country, you see that. And I think in particular, often female candidates or candidates of color are some of the biggest victims of that vote splitting problem.
Mhm.
Like, because two people step up to run at the same time and they get told, how could voters possibly tell you apart? One of you needs to get out of the race. I think in particular about our last election for governor, when we had two Black women on the ballot in the Democratic primary, they were both named Jennifer. And
Mhm.
people were like, how could you possibly tell the difference between
Mhm.
Jen McClellan and Jen Carroll Foy?
Mhm.
If you know them personally, they're very different human beings.
Mhm.
Those are not the same people.
Mhm.
But they were running against Terry McAuliffe. And so many people told them, one of you has got to get out of the race.
Mhm.
Like, if either of you has any chance of winning, one of you has to drop out. You need to get in a room and sort that out.
Mhm.
And we don't need to do that anymore. We don't need those decisions to be made in smoky back rooms. They can be made at the ballot box.
Mhm.
And you can have people show up and say, JCF is my favorite, Jen
Mhm.
McClellan's my backup, and then Terry McAuliffe. Or you can have somebody else have it the other way. Like, we don't need to make those decisions for the voters. We can let the voters have a say in that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What you think, Max? Raise
Yeah,
it.
I did have one final question, but it can be for another day. But I'm thinking about redistricting as this trickles up, and what impact or how does this change the game when it comes to that?
Oh, I love these questions.
Yeah.
You guys
You know
have
it.
great intuition for where all this can go.
Mhm.
So redistricting is all about putting people in boxes.
Mm-hmm.
You got red people and blue people, and you're trying to draw the lines so there's the right number of red
Mhm.
people and blue people in each box so that your team wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
This means there's more kind of people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
With ranked choice voting, there's not just red people and blue people. Maybe there's purple people, there's green people, there's orange people. There's more than just two kinds of people in the
Mhm.
world. So ranked choice voting can really reduce gerrymandering by eliminating the incentive.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you allow people to express themselves in a wider range, it becomes much harder to put them in boxes
Mhm.
and draw just the right district around them so you get just the right number of votes. And if you
Mhm.
think about districts like ours that are hard for Democrats to win, like Gloria Witt has my full support, but she knows she's climbing a tough hill
Mhm.
this fall. You could imagine if we've
Mm.
got a ranked choice election somewhere down the road, that there's another candidate who's somewhere between John McGuire and Gloria Witt, and there's a lot of space there,
Mm-hmm.
who could enter that race and start to be competitive. And right now, we don't see that. We don't see third parties. We don't see independents get in the race because they don't think they can win. They
Yeah.
think they'll just split the vote. They'll tip it to somebody who's actually their least favorite candidate. One of the most powerful things that ranked choice voting does is it gets rid of that spoiler effect that scares people out of a race
Mhm.
and gets more candidates in the mix.
Okay.
Charles had told me one time before, we were talking about like the music industry, and we were talking about people that go for like the big companies and people that go independent, right? And now like social media, YouTube has opened up to where independent artists can thrive in today's market. When you just made that about there being different people, purple people, green people. So we don't have to be Democratic. We don't have to be Republican. We can be something else and still actually have value in this race. Would that be sort of similar for a person to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. You can think of this as like opening up competition.
Okay.
And making it easier for people to have more choices and to never feel like they have to choose between voting for who they really like and voting for who they think can win. And once we get rid of that spoiler dynamic, then you see more people throw their hat in the race because they've actually got a real shot. And that's right now what I think keeps a lot of candidates on the sidelines is they think, I've got a different perspective. I might have something to offer, but under this current system, there's no way I could win, so I bother.
And just kind of eliminate the write-in vote.
You can still have write-ins with ranked choice. So this paper that we've got in front of us right now, it's got a little cartoon. It doesn't have a write-in space, but you can still have a write-in space on a ranked choice ballot. Yeah, for sure.
Good. All right. Did we not cover something that you wanted to talk about?
Here's all I'll say. If it is September 2024, you have until June 2025 to learn how to fill out your ranked choice ballot. So we got a lot of time. If you're listening to this and you're excited about it and you want to talk more, that's what Ranked Choice Virginia is all about.
Okay.
What we are going to be doing over the year ahead is engaging with as many voters in as many formats as possible. And one of the things that we have learned from our partners in other cities and states is that the best way to teach people about ranked choice is to give them a chance to practice in a setting that has nothing to do with politics.
Okay.
So you get them to go to some place like we were at Civo Sabroso yesterday, the Latin festival, and we were walking around with ballots for people to vote for their favorite taqueria. And so you could say, oh yeah, La Michoacana is my favorite. And then after that, I love Tacos Gomez. And you can pick your favorite restaurant that way. Next month, we're going to be at the Seville Pie Fest, and people will be voting. You know, I like sweet potato first. I like apple second. When people get a chance to vote for things where they're used to having preferences, like what's your favorite ice cream? What's your favorite pizza? Get it out of the red team, blue team framework where people are used to only having two options. And suddenly, once folks see that, they get that they've been ranking things all their life.
Yeah.
They're used to having a favorite and a backup, and that's really all this is about.
All right. Thank you, Sally.
I like it.
Thanks for joining us today. Lots of information. All right, family, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to say our goodbyes for today.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3 Jams.
HO Talk Show. Sir Charles, Miss Max Razor.
You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Maxilia Robinson and Charles Lewis, only on 101.3